Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In our last class, we discussed the basic definition of fasting and also the types of fasting. And now what we're going to discuss is probably the most important aspect that we can simply cover. Remember, we said that fasting was basically two things, abstinence from three things, and intention. So let's look at intention for a little bit. Well, before that, let's look at eligibility, right? We need to see who is eligible to fast. You have to be eligible in order to keep the intention and do the um, abstinence. So who is eligible? Well, let's look at this. An eligible person would be someone who is Muslim, mature, and of sound mind. These are the three conditions to be eligible for fasting, right? Muslim, obviously. Mature, you should be physically mature, right? That's part of your eligibility. And that's not to say somebody who's physically immature. Physical maturity is what? Physical maturity for a woman, for example, is the first time she has menses. For a man, it's the first time he would have a nocturnal emission. Or we would just put a hard figure at about, if those things don't happen, we would put the age at about 15 years. Obviously, if you're below that, or if you're prior to that experience or that age, you can still do it, but it will not count towards fulfilling any obligations. And of course, sound mind, right? You have to be in your right mind to be able to do acts of worship. Otherwise, um, they'd be senseless acts. Who is not eligible? Well, a woman who is actually in menses, while she's in her menses, she is not eligible to fast. And same thing for a woman undergoing postnatal bleeding. We would have covered this in the course on prayer for women. We did a specific course on prayer just for women, and there we covered some of the details about menstruation, namely that the minimum amount of menstruation is 3 days and the maximum is 10, which means that if you bleed over 10 days, then anything beyond that will be considered dysfunctional. So you should go ahead and pray and fast. Uh, Same thing for postnatal bleeding. Postnatal bleeding doesn't really, this is the bleeding that happens uh, after giving birth. And this lasts about maximum of time that the law has given is 40 days. So if you're still bleeding after 40 days, you can go ahead and um, wash yourself, take the ghusl, and start to pray and fast. If it's 40 days and you caught it right in Ramadan, then you won't be able to fast that whole month. You'll have to catch the next month. But one extra point, some point that needs to be clarified is if you miss any fasts in Ramadan, you do have to make them up later. So that's an important point. And we will get into making up fasts later in this course. Now let's talk about intention. First, let's look at specific intention versus unspecified intention. Uh, Intention is basically just an action of the heart. It's not really something that requires any definition. It's not something that you do formally. It's something that you do within yourself. When you know what you're doing, you have an intention. You can have an intention to do something, and then you go ahead and do it. So it's something that's completely internal. It's a matter of the heart, as we say. And sometimes your intentions are specific with respect to fasting, at least, and sometimes they're not. Well, which types of fasts require a specific intention? Well, first of all, it's the makeups of Ramadan, which we call qada. So if we missed some fasts in Ramadan, we, of course, like we said before, we need to make them up. The um, makeups of those fasts, you need to, whenever you make the intention to fast them, You need to specifically say, I'm making up, or not say, but say within yourself, I am intending to do the fast of such and such day of Ramadan that I missed. You have to make that specific for each makeup fast of Ramadan that you're making up. Also, makeups of Nafl fasts that were broken. If you remember what we talked about in the last lesson, the Nafl fasts that we break are the fasts that become wajib, mandatory for us to make up later. And when we are finally getting around to making up those Nafl optional fasts that were broken, we need to specifically make that intention. I'm making the fast, tomorrow I intend to fast for this particular fast that I broke, that I'm making up. Also, fasts of expiation, Kaffārah. We touched upon this a little bit in the last class, and inshallah, we're going to see it in the future of this course. The fasts of Kaffārah also need a specific intention. I'm making up this particular day of the Kaffārah for this fast, etc. And fasts of unspecified vows. Unspecified vows would be, oh Allah, I I swear that I will fast, um, one day for your pleasure. Well, that's an unspecified vow because you didn't specify which day you were going to fast. So, whenever you want to do that fast, which you will need to do because we said these fasts are mandatory that you make for vows, then you will make that specific intention to say in your heart, I am going to make up this particular fast that I had vowed to do. What are the fasts then that do not require a specific intention? Well, the fasts of Ramadan. When you're in the month, you just make the intention to fast the next day. You get up and you do your thing. Because fasts are such a thing that the whole day is the time of the fast. So you can't include anything else. So if it's a day of Ramadan, you have to fast that day of Ramadan. So if you just wake up intending to fast, then that's enough of an intention. It doesn't need anything specific when you're actually in the month. Also, fasts of specified vows. What's the specified vow? Where you specify the day. Oh Allah, I vow to fast the 12th of Jamad al-Ula, one of the other months of the year. Well then, when it comes time on on the 12th of Jamad al-Ula, you just get up, make the intention, and fast. Okay? And we also have Nafl fasts. Nafl fasts are the purely optional ones. That includes the the Sunnah fasts and that includes the Mandub fasts as well. You just go to sleep and you make the intention for the next day, or if you have woken up during before the first half of the day has passed, you make that intention and you go ahead with the fast. So what am I talking about here? A certain time of the day. We're going to get to that in the next lesson, inshallah. So these were the fasts that require a specific intention. And here is where we are going to uh, stop our lesson and we will continue the next time we meet. Insha'Allahu tabaraka wa ta'ala.